I'm from the Zimbabwe Republic Police Victim-Friendly Unit, and I'm also going to be representing Save the Children. I will explain why. And let me just briefly explain who we are. The Victim-Friendly Unit is a section in the Zimbabwe Republic Police that has been mandated to police crimes against women and children. So as you guys will be discussing about business, for us, we'll be looking after your children. That is our interest, and that is the reason why we are here. And when we are talking about cybersecurity, we also have an interest because our children are not safe as far as the cyberspace is concerned. The Victim-Friendly Unit basically is a section that policies crimes against women and children with a bias towards sexual offenses and domestic violence. But one would then ask, where do we come in when we talk about cybersecurity? We have realized that from the data that we have, anecdotal data, and also data from other studies that have been done throughout the world, we have realized that there are so many things, bad things happen to our children through their interface with the internet. And as an organization, we saw it fit that we take a proactive role and try and come up with interventions that will ensure that at least as you guys will be discussing these things in your high offices, we will be on the ground helping our children. But what are the hazards, one would ask? There are various hazards that can be encountered by our children on the internet. Firstly, there are issues to do with sexual predators that also roam the internet. These are the people who then groom our children, because our children are also using the internet, so these guys will also go on the internet and groom them and abuse our children in the process. There's also the issues to do with cyberbullying. There's also issues to do with harassment and issues to do with revenge pornography. I'm sure most of you are aware about issues to do with revenge pornography, where maybe our children will exchange nude pictures with their friends, and after the relationship has gone bad, then the pictures are then splashed on the internet, and the children are abused along that way. Over and above that, we also have child abuse material that is also either produced, distributed, or consumed on the internet. I'm sure most of you are aware of the chat rooms that are available. You are also aware of some other sites that distribute child pornography, as some would want to call it. But for us, we would call it child sexual abuse material. So that is our interest, really. And as the Zimbabwe Republic Police and the Victim-Friendly Unit in particular, we saw it fit that we must come up with interventions that will, in a way, ameliorate these problems. Hence, we partnered with Save the Children, and we have got a pilot program that we are doing at the moment. One of the things that we are doing, which is very critical, for us to be able to protect our children, we need to educate and raise awareness on these issues to our children. And not only to the children, but even to us as parents. We need to be aware how we can assist our children to be good digital citizens, if you want. How they can use the internet more responsibly, and also how we can protect them of predators. So we have got a program that we are doing at the moment that we are piloting in Harare with the funding and assistance from Save the Children Norway, and we've been engaging a number of other organizations to try and see how best we can strengthen this particular intervention. So we have set up this pilot project in 10 stations in Harare, and we are also coming up with a specialist core group that will then link up with Interpol. I'm happy the other presenter was talking about the partnership that they have with Interpol. And for us, we are also linking up with Interpol child sexual abuse exploitation database to try and help in the identification of sexual abuse material that will have identified on the net as originating from Zimbabwe. Indications are that there is a lot of activity amongst Zimbabweans who are consuming child abuse material, what we call child pornography. So that is what we will be doing, and we have already started working on that. We will be identifying areas where this will be happening and institute investigations. And we'll also try to identify any images, be they pictures or videos, that we feel originated from Zimbabwe, and try to identify the victims. Because victim identification is the key in the kind of intervention that we would want to do. And we'll be working together with Interpol and other organizations. But this is not an easy job, because we would really need high-tech devices, and we also need software. For example, images identification software that will help us to identify the source and victim identification. And that is where, as an organization, we really appeal to you guys as an industry to come and work with us so that we work together and protect our children. These are our children, so we must also invest in them. So for those who want to work with us, our doors are open. Let us work together. So that would be one of the recommendations that we can send into the ministry, that we need partnerships between the police, particularly the victim-friendly units, and the industry in working together in jungle, particularly as far as children are concerned. And one area also that we would also want the cooperation of the industry and also the ministry as well is what is that we can do once we have identified a particular site to be carrying child sexual abuse material. Then we would think about things like takedowns. We then want to engage the industry so that when we come to you as an internet service provider and ask you to take down certain pictures from the site, that will be done with minimal problems. And the ministry also and the regulators also would want to also to engage them so that even site blocking, because we don't want people to consume child pornography or child sexual abuse material. So one of the interventions from best practices over the world is that one way of doing it is through site blocking. And we'll be working together with Interpol and the rest of the world, and we'll be taking the best practices from the world, that at least Zimbabwe as a nation, we are not left behind as far as protection of children is concerned. Okay, one would then ask, do we have cases? Yes, we have cases that we have seen. We have seen children being groomed over the social media. They come to Harare, they end up being abused. Yes, we have received pictures from all over the world asking us questions whether these are not Zimbabwean children. So there is a lot of activity on the internet that we would want to deal with. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Mtema. Let me just call on the next one, which has tried to be very brief so that we do it in far less than 5 minutes. I would like to invite now Kuda Hove to just give us a brief, and then we'll go to the next one.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. And I'm from an organization called the Media Institute of Southern Africa, which is MISA Zimbabwe for short. MISA Zimbabwe exists to promote freedom of expression, both online and offline, as well as any other rights which feed into or promote rights related to freedom of expression. And this is how MISA Zimbabwe, which traditionally worked to promote offline rights with journalists, ended up in the space to do or related to ICT policy, as well as how internet governance is done in Zimbabwe and the regions. My job there is to be the legal and ICT policy officer. So I'm really involved in monitoring how internet space in Zimbabwe is regulated, the challenges that Zimbabwean internet users face online, and how we can take that conversation forward, not only with policymakers like the people in this room, but also with ordinary users of the internet in Zimbabwe. And one thing that we've discovered in our work as MISA Zimbabwe is that when you talk about cybersecurity or anything to do with cyberspace or the internet, you are talking about this abstract animal that people can't really relate to. For us in this room, we probably have a really good grasp on what cyberspace is, what cybersecurity is. I enjoyed Engineer Roberts' presentation in the morning when he was reeling off all these terms. And that's the nature of our language, that's the nature of our speak in this room, because it's things that we have a hands-on approach to on a daily basis. But to someone whose version of the internet is just Facebook and WhatsApp, that's a totally different picture. To them, cyberspace is something that they can't relate to. But when we turn to the definitions section of the National Cybersecurity Strategy Policy, cyberspace is actually described as the fifth frontier. No talk about land, air, and something else. Sorry, the fourth one. Sorry, it is then the fourth one, not the fifth. So when people were drafting the National Cybersecurity Policy in Zimbabwe, they understood that the fourth realm, that we exist in, is on cyberspace. And that is how practical, that is how tangible cyberspace is. But in our work, we've realized that there's a need or there's a missing step. Besides making laws to regulate the internet space, besides making cyber policies and cybersecurity policies available to people, there's a real need to approach people at their level. There's a real need to address what we call the missing step. What is the missing step? The missing step is to actually get people on board and interested about cybersecurity issues. Because there's only so much that legislation or regulation can do. Someone just before lunch was talking about how passwords, or the person who's responsible for implementing passwords, is actually the weakest link in the whole cybersecurity chain. And for that person to be a stronger link in that chain, we need a shift in culture. We need to get people to understand that when we talk about cybersecurity, we're not talking about just securing the money in your EcoCash wallet or your One Wallet. We're talking about actually safeguarding the data that you can't see, the data that you can't touch. So our work has really been about how we get together with academics, how we get together with nerds or the techies in the room, and we actually compose it, bring that knowledge, that composite knowledge, and we package it in a way that people can understand. And people can actually get to a point where they feel a need to change their behavior online. Let's look at things that we overstep or that we overlook at times. There's a study that was done, and I have to be upfront about the study. The study showed that in developed countries, it was in Europe or America, it showed that by the time a child is 5 years old, from the time they are born to the time they are 5, to the time they turn 5 years of age, on average, about 3,000 to 5,000 images of the child will have been taken and uploaded and shared online. Whether it's through the parents' WhatsApp status, whether it's through their Facebook profile, whether it's any other online platform. But by the time someone turns 5, okay, just imagine that. By the time someone turns 5, there's 5,000 images of that person online. That is oversharing. What does that say about privacy? What does that say about child online? Sexual predators online, pedophiles, thrive on those pictures. To us, parents who don't have that understanding, it's just a cute picture of my baby or my twins or whatever. But to someone, it's actually the fodder that feeds their malice or their funny habits. So those are the things that we need to talk about when we talk about cybersecurity. Let's remove it from being a very technical thing. Well, at least that's what we're striving for as an organization, to remove the conversation from being very technical, very complicated, to something that people can relate to. Let's use examples that they can relate to. But that's why you don't have any issues encouraging people to safeguard their ATM PIN numbers or safeguarding their EcoCash PIN numbers. They understand that. But let's shift that conversation to cybersecurity issues as well. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kudahove. We thank you so much for that. Our next panelist is Mr. Gwatizo from ICT. All right, okay. Let's go on to BITREC, Ms. Lloyd Kumbemba.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Lloyd Kumbemba. I'm the CE BITREC Cybersecurity. Basically, I think cybersecurity is in the offensive platform of cybersecurity, as Dimitri has alluded. It's a global business that we are trying to build. It's in Southern Africa, Europe, and America. And what have we done about society and protection of corporates as juristic persons and community and all these things? We've done quite a bit. We know there's a lot of things that has to be done. Cybersecurity is an emerging profession. A lot of people don't understand it. There's a void out there that we realize that so many of us, we might be technical, we might be ICT people, don't understand. But what we've done to that effect is the fact that we've come up with products that can be able to help in order to avert threats and hacking. One of the products that, as a company, as a cybersecurity company, we have come up with, we do pen tests, that's the core business, penetration testing, vulnerability assessment and penetration testing. We also delve in personal security. One of the challenges that a lot of corporates and a lot of people don't understand is that, yes, you might have information security, which is different from cybersecurity. Because cybersecurity, we are using gadgets, we are protecting the gadgets that we're actually using that handles data. Is that of the weakest chain of things that I've seen in the chain, the weakest link is our people. Hence, among the things that we do, we also focus on social engineering. Do you know how easy it is for us to extract a password, not from a server, not from a laptop, not from a PC, but from a person? You can do it yourself. You don't have to be a cybersecurity expert. You can social engineer, just go at your reception of your company or any reception of the company and just use a little bit of tricks to extract the username and password. It's very easy. Or you can just call someone to a bar and give him some bottle of beers, and after they are drunk, you can ask them about their password. They will actually surrender it to you. And most of us, what we do is that, most like the C-level, we've got our PAs and secretaries. Sometimes we are not coming to work, we've got flu, we are down with flu at home. We tell our PA, you know, I'm not coming today, but I just want you to pick up this document that I was developing yesterday. This is my password. They surrender their password in that way. So because of that, we realize that there's need for us to focus on the people aspect, on non-technical aspect, which is very, very important, because so often we leave out this aspect. That's what we focus in terms, that's what we do in terms of contributing towards resolving challenges in cybersecurity. We also have designed a situation, or not only that, we also have a product that we do, that we offer, that is to do with the networks that we've already built. We've already built our networks, and we've got an architecture, we've got these fantastic local area networks that we built. But how are they talking to the cybersecurity practices? How are they talking to? Are they talking to them? Because as Venom has mentioned, some people say, well, I've got a firewall, and I've got an AV, endpoint AV. I'm secured. That's wrong. You're fooling yourself. Because in this space, we have now come out of that cocoon. We are now into what is called threat intelligence sphere. These hackers have become so smart that they also need smart solutions. So we have come up with our own products. Instead of relying on the off-the-shelf products, we've come up with our own, which you can patent as an African business. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that at a later stage. But this is one of the things that we've done. Also, the other aspect that I've seen, ladies and gentlemen, and this is a fact, is the fact that there's absolute ignorance about cybersecurity, right from the top level. The top level do not understand what ICT is about, later on the cybersecurity space. So often when they're in the board meetings or they're discussing their ExCo, when something comes about ICT, they always relegate it to an ICT manager who is down there below a CFO. And the CFO does not even have a clue of what ICT is all about. They relegate ICT to finance. That's the crux of the problem, because the CFO would not relate ICT-related matters to the group that matters, that makes strategic decisions. That's where the key is. Now, what organizations and banks have done, what we've done, particularly at Reserve Banks in the whole Mauritius, Southern Africa, and so forth, we've advised that there must be a change of reporting lines in terms of having a CIO, CSO to report at a strategic level of decision-making level, because cybersecurity is the in thing. It's a risk management strategy that we need to build in our vision and in our strategies of our businesses, because it can threaten an organization. That's why boards are actually looking at it as part of the audit and committee level. And it's very, very important for C-level people to understand that. And that's what we've built, that's why we've built training. This training is not ethical training for technical people. Yes, it matters. But the key people are the right people, the top people. The CEO must understand that if I'm going to use my laptop at the airport and I'm on the internet, I'm exposed. Anyone can actually come and hack me. If I'm using my laptop at a hotel, it's easy for people to hack me. And those are because these people, the top level people, they don't feel like that they are not into cybersecurity space, and therefore they need to relegate this to cybersecurity technical people. That's wrong. It's a very wrong concept. That's why you find companies hacked. Because strategies are not, ICT is not crafted in the vision and mission and business strategies that people are trying to craft. So that's where we come in and educate that level. When you educate them, it's easy for you to present your budget to them. It's easy for them to acquiesce, to accept, and to implement things of that nature into their business forward. So very, very, very important aspect. And what we have also done coming to the threat intelligence space is the fact that gone are the days when AV, we said we are secured through antivirus. As I've said before, threat intelligence is where we are. Hackers are very, very smart. They know where to hit you. They know exactly which are the weak points. So what we've come up with is that we are coming from a situation where we are reactive. You know, so often we get hacked. A ransomware comes and our data is encrypted and so forth and so on. And we start lamenting over it. And we call forensics auditors. They come in and they pick up the pieces, stuff like that. That's reaction. But the key point is, how do you bring in a situation where you catch someone or detect someone right there, online, instantaneously? That's the space that we have come. We've come up with a product which is called Threat Box. A Threat Box is a simple device, and that device can be able to detect who is hacking and which system. And if you want to hear more, you'll be able to hear more from ourselves and for Dimitri, and we are able to share some of this information to you. For this point, at this point in time, I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. Shall we then lastly get Mr. Gwatidzo to share with us his brief on ICT?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's the after lunch break, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Lovely. I'm going to find it very difficult to stay in 5 minutes because there's a lot that needs to be discussed on the cybersecurity space for society. And I like the fact that there is an agreement that there is such a thing as a society. And I would venture to say what we're really talking about is the information society and how we secure ourselves, all of us, in that society. And when you talk information society, you're essentially talking about a vision. And the challenge that we have as Zimbabwe and as diverse countries in the world is that the technology is so fast changing, we are hardly ever chasing the same vision at the same time. So you've heard from the panelists here, you have policymakers who are trying to make policies about what intends to happen in the future, which future is very different to what you as a corporate or you as an individual has got. So we really need to say in our strategy document that one of the key things we need to put in place, and the PEMSEC alluded to it, is a forum where we are continuously envisioning, saying where do we want to be, so that we are starting to reach out for 21st century logistics, even while we are still living in a world built and running on 17th century logistics. Because if we then don't do that, it's very difficult to appreciate some of the long-term root and branch changes that we have to make. There are corporate leaders here who have heard and used disruptive industries. What are they disrupting? Your business model is the one that is dated, and you want to hold the world in a particular logistical space and not move. That is a lack of vision. We're not going to be able to secure an old business model when we are running on 21st century logistics. So you have to change even how you run the organization, who you make responsible for what, that has to change. So in addition to having this continuous innovation, we have to make sure we are responsible to each other as individuals in the same society. You are as much responsible for my security as I'm responsible for yours. We heard the case studies this morning, how the failure to do bank reconciliations led two businesses to spend 3 months unaware that their money is being taken from them, because there isn't that communication that ought to have been taking place. So we must treat each other with respect and dignity as individuals, even as juristic persons. And we emerge from a consumer perspective. You've seen businesses who go to consumers and make wild claims about their ICT-enabled services without bothering about the security of those services. We cannot be a society together, a cohesive society, if you are treating your fellow consumers as just pockets where you'd grab money, irrespective of the risks that you expose them to. So you have a responsibility, and you will know that as a country we are amending the Companies Act. In that Companies Act, we're going to make directors of companies personally liable for things that would have failed in those companies. And there's a lot of ICT failures that are costing citizens, where we will be able, using both the changes in the Companies Act and the Consumer Protection Act that we've advocated for, to come after you as individuals. So it's no longer right for you to delegate it to somebody lower down, because we won't come for the IT manager. We will come for the CEO of that company, because you will have led the advent of those. The second thing that I'd like to stress on, we've heard and we respect Zimbabwe Institute of Engineers and all your competencies and all you do for us. But you know, the space that we are talking about and the digital citizens, that is ICT, we've heard it including from NEC Africa this morning, that is 12 to 16-year-olds. You have in your old business models an HR dependent on certificates and qualifications. You're not likely to use that same strategy to bring in the required skills and competences into your companies. You have to start to accept that the expertise might well be in Vernon with 44 years experience in the industry, but it's also in that 16-year-old guy that your HR policies don't allow to be employed in a position as information security manager. You have to change root and branch. You have to accept what is happening if you're going to change society. You must allow space, whether it's in government or it's in your family or it's in your company, for the young, uncertified but competent people to come in and hold senior responsibilities and do it for you. How many of you here get your children to change channels for you on DSTV? And yet, when a 21-year-old knocks on your company door and says, I have discovered this vulnerability, you say, you 21 years old, how can you discover this vulnerability? It's not right. So your mindset has to change. You have to accept what is going on. I mentioned the Companies Act. I mentioned the Consumer Protection Act. Aware that we are in the process of reviewing the Postal and Telecommunications Act. But we haven't taken into account the reality of convergence, which was a reality since 1990 Chakuti. We are still treating a Postal and Telecommunications Act as if it's a separate animal to the Broadcasting Act, and I wish Degeteke was here. It's time for a Communications Act, because these things have merged. Why do you want to create silos where they no longer exist? It doesn't make sense for the society that we live in. And lastly, I know Kabanda is very anxious on time, but lastly, I want to tackle a sensitive area. We are running essentially a Westminster democracy in which we create ministers who have silos that they are in charge of. I know that some of us have worked very hard to make sure that these systems work, but I'm not sure that the Westminster type of parliament is 21st century compatible. You can no longer depend on one individual calling themselves a member of parliament and attempting to represent 35,000 constituencies. In the same way as you cannot have, with respect to the ministry, a community information center attempting to be a township for internet access. Internet access is what we want to have in our homes. With the smartphone, it's a referendum we can have every day. So we have to change our system of. You can't take cybersecurity and badge it to the Ministry of ICT, because cybersecurity perhaps belongs in the ministry that is responsible for national security, for defense. And what we would want to see is prioritization of cybersecurity. There is in existence what's called a universal service fund. Each of us as consumers, individuals and corporates, we pay a consumer levy of 1.5% into that fund. And that's supposed to be advanced information society that we are talking about. Perhaps it's time we agreed to pay not 1.5%, but 5%, and offer the difference to the important area of cybersecurity. Because if a hacker pulls down the mobile services platform, can you imagine what kind of life we will have? It's important to secure that. I can be here all day giving you examples, but if you want, we can talk about how we can do the root and branch changes that make us 21st century compatible. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gwatizo. So we have had our 4 panelists, starting with Superintendent Mutema, who was talking about the victim-friendly units and the child abuse material and its concerns, and inviting people to work with ZRP to ensure that we reduce the level of vulnerabilities. Then we then had from Mr. Kudahove, from MISA. His emphasis was a lot more on the change of behavior as we interact and interface online, and ensuring that privacy issues are taken care of. And then Ms. Lloyd Kubemba, they spoke about the products that he has as a solution to reduce the threats from hacking and other kind of things that are there. And his concern was on the level of ignorance, and was pointing us to the future of making sure that the risk management is taken very seriously. And then my friend Mr. Gwatizo, very important issues on information society to ensure that things are here, with the specific focus on envisioning a lot more than anything else, with the need for us to respect one another, working together, and then also review the acts. So colleagues, I would want us at this point in time just to invite any 3 questions or issues you want the panelists. I know our time is run out right now, but any very brief questions or points you want the panelists to. So I'll just choose any 3. I will have 1, 2, 3. I'll probably just make it 4 for those 4 hands, one after the other. And you can, if you can just indicate to us to whom you are directing your question to. After collecting all these questions, then ask the panelists to conclude the discussions.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Simba. I'm the head of Cyber Law Unit at DBN Attorneys. I'm a legal practitioner. My question is directed to the gentleman from MISA Zimbabwe, and it ties in with what the last speaker spoke of. I have read the commentary on the cyber bill, cybercrime and cyber security bill of 2017 that came from MISA, your organization, and I find it impressive. However, I have a question, and my question is, in your bill, you criticized that the cybercrime committee, as well as the center that deals with cybercrime, has over-involvement of security forces. Your commentary states that security forces are over-involved, or you feel that the presence of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces or some security forces could lead to a curtailment of people's basic rights. Now, to tie it in with what the last speaker said, do you not think that cybersecurity is a national security issue that warrants the attention of security forces, whatever your reservations may be about the rights of individuals being trampled? That would be taken care of by the already existent constitution, which we voted into effect in 2013 through a referendum. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we have the next one? Who was the next one? At the back there.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sitabile Ndlovu. I am of a tech company called Viking Techno Intel from Bulawayo. My question, or rather suggestion, is for the superintendent for therapy. The vision for our company is to impact a technological revolution in the way that organizations run and use technology in order to empower Zimbabwe. So my suggestion is, instead of dwelling too much on the problems that we're facing, we should actually be coming up with solutions. So my suggested solution for the ZRP is, seeing as though that we have an online problem, this is a social media problem in terms of predators and young people being abused or taken advantage of on social media. Why don't we create a social media campaign that creates awareness, and there's actually some kind of accountability as towards people knowing the effects of the things that they're doing and how they can be held accountable for that. Because in a sense, I feel like it's an issue of awareness. When people don't know what they're doing is wrong, they don't feel accountable. And there's no form of awareness for the young people to know that they can actually report to a certain institute, or they can actually do specific things in order to protect themselves from these predators. So I think it's important that you have a social media presence to address social media issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to the back. I think we can just do it very quickly because of our time.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm David. I'm a student of Information and Assurance from HIT. My question is to the speaker who spoke about how the Westminster style of governance is no longer working for the Zimbabwean setup. So I wanted to ask him what they in the United Kingdom are using, and I wanted to know if he has an alternative method of governance that can be applied to the Zimbabwean context. Like I was reading in the newspaper just recently about how they were talking about the Rwandan model of governance, and I wanted to know his alternative. Thank you very much.
I think one more there. Okay, the last one there.
Thank you. My name is Brighton. I'm the lead engineer for Golex. So my question is directly for the guys from ZRP. I want to know what they're doing to stop media houses from promoting revenge porn, because most people who do revenge porn, their aim is to spread the news out there and shame people. And it seems like we are allowing our media houses to promote that through publishing such information in our newspapers. What are we doing to actually stop the media houses from promoting such things, such crimes? They make it appear as if they want to stop it, but merely publishing such information and showing, even though they are black, it's promoting that, and it's giving fuel to revenge porn in Zimbabwe. So what are we doing to stop media houses from destroying this country through such things?
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I think these are very interesting questions that are coming from the floor. And I would like to invite the panelists to respond to those questions. The first question was directed to Misa concerning cybersecurity, whether cybersecurity is a national security issue, and would want you to, for you to respond to that. And then the second question was directed to ZRP, ask if you, this is just a suggestion, that perhaps you want to create a social media campaign and bring forth your awareness in a more effective manner than currently what you're doing. And the third one was directed to Mr. Gwatizo, Information Society, requesting you to come up with an alternative system of governance with respect to the issues that we had presented earlier on. And then the fourth one goes back again to the popular ZRP to look at the issue of porn, to see the role that media houses are playing. So if you can just respond to those very briefly so that we can answer those questions. So I will start with you from MISA, Mr. Hove, if you can tackle that.
Thank you very much, Simba, for your question. So before I actually respond to whether we think it's a national cybersecurity issue, I would like to point out two things to you. The first thing is that since its introduction in 2013 or thereabout, the cyber crimes bill has gone through about 3 different phases or 3 different drafts. So the commentary that you're referring to is rightly from us, and it was based on the second draft. And the second draft came out, and initially that committee was made up of people that are either from government or from the security sector, the various sections of the security sector. So our commentary there wasn't to say, let's not have any police officers or any security sector detail. The commentary there was simply to say, cybersecurity cannot safely be handled by government alone. We advocate a lot in our work for a multi-stakeholder approach. That's why over the past 2 years rather, we've held Internet Governance Forums that support the work of the Zimbabwean Internet Governance Forum, which is a body which rests with POTRAs or is administered by POTRAs. So we've always, in all our work, pushed for a multi-stakeholder approach. And we were glad to see that in the third draft of that bill, there's actually now provision for someone to sit on that same committee or that board who represents the civil society organizations. So in other words, civil society organizations that are not affiliated to government have now got the option to say, this is someone that we believe will be the voice to represent our sector when there's discussions to do with internet governance in Zimbabwe. And that's all we were pushing for. We're not pushing for the total removal of government in these affairs, because at the end of the day, cybersecurity is a national issue. And I do support the point that even if it were to be put under the Ministry of Defense, for example, it wouldn't be out of place. So what we were simply pushing for was for a multi-stakeholder approach and not for it to be exclusive from government processes. We can't do it without government, just like government can't do it properly without other players from the technical field, from CSOs and everything, because cybersecurity best works when there is involvement of or when there's incorporation rather, of human rights principles, we can't all be about security at the expense of online rights such as the right to access information, freedom of expression, and privacy.
Okay, thank you very much. Superintendent Mutema?
Thank you very much.
Maybe you can just address the two.
Yes, I will do that. Thank you so much. The first, it was rather a suggestion, which I think the lady was very spot on in her observation. But like I indicated earlier on in my presentation, I indicated that one way or the greatest method of protecting our is through awareness and education. Yes, we would need such initiatives to educate our children, not children, even ourselves as parents. We need this information. And such an initiative, I think it's a brilliant idea that we might also consider as we take forward the intervention that I talked about. But that is a brilliant idea that we would really consider taking on board. Then coming to the issue of revenge pornography and also the contribution of media houses. Really, it's quite disturbing that we've seen these things coming up. I'm sure even one of one of the media houses that we know publishes such things, he also made reference to that publication. And as our role as the police, we do. We work within the parameters of the current legislation. And if the current legislation is silent about it, and if we people want the legislation to remain as it is, there isn't much that we can do. Remember what we are using at the moment. We are using the Censorship of Entertainment and Control Act. And this is an act where we then have the censorship board. Now, if we have any material that we feel this is nude, this is obscene, before we proceed with that particular matter, we need to take those pictures before this particular board. This is what the law says. And the board then determines whether this particular pic or this particular video or whatever material that will have recovered constitute obscene or immoral material. So this is the parameter that we are working from. So at the end of the day, it boils down back to us as the community, as the society. If we want legislative changes, I think we know what we can do. But for us as the police, we work with what is available. But suffice to say, if the nude pics are then distributed, say, uncensored, they are not blurred like you made reference to. If we manage to identify the person who sent those pictures, or if we find you in possession of those pictures, we'll definitely prosecute you. We'll definitely arrest and press charges against this particular. But the issue of revenge pornography, this is a very, very traumatic experience. I've had an opportunity. I'm a psychologist by profession. I've had an opportunity to have sessions with victims of revenge pornography, and I've seen how traumatized they have been. Because they have no control of these pics. They are circulating everywhere. And this is very traumatic, and as a nation, we need to take action. And for us as the police, that's why we are coming up with these initiatives, because we need to devote many hours towards policing issues to do with the internet, and the identification of such issues is one of the key issues that we are taking on board. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Mr. Gwatiso.
Thank you very much, David, for that challenge. Well, as a person and as a body, we do have offerings on alternative forms of government. I think the more important fact to acknowledge is that you have to take ownership of how you are governed, David, especially as a student. I know there were lots of students who complained when the curriculum was changed. There were lots of students who complained when we were going on a national service program. There were lots of youngsters who are given $10 and they go and conduct political violence. There's lots of youngsters who see themselves as divorced from the liberation values at the beginning of the Constitution. So what am I saying? I'm saying the alternative form of government must be informed by our collective awareness and appreciation of the changed logistics. We cannot keep holding on to things of the past. Even you hear some politicians saying Zimbabwe used to be the breadbasket of, we want to go back there. I'm sorry, but there's nothing in our past that is pleasant to go back to. Let's look to the future. Let's look at the new technologies. Let's look at the new logistics. And let's go there. I mean, you've just heard antiviruses are out. You know, this is less than 20 years from when they began. And you want to go back to look at the old systems. You want to go back to insurance as it was done in the Lloyd's market in 1780. It will work. You know, so define new ways, including, at the end of the day, how you are governed. Because when you hear the psychologists from ZRP talking about the limitations of the legislation, that is what I'm talking about. You have to change that legislation so that it enables my dear friend Stabile to come up with a values clarification exercise, to define new cultural industries. How do we protect our music? How do we make sure that it is our content that people see first on the internet and not the abusive one that they don't want to see? And make sure that we are governing ourselves in such a manner that, David, tomorrow you can come up with a new law without a new parliament in Mount Hampton, because everything will be happening in cyber. You see what I'm saying? Thank you.
I think let us give a round of applause to our panelists. I think these are very exciting discussions. We can go on and on and on, but I think as a way forward, what we need to focus on concerning our society is to step our efforts on awareness. I think it's coming out clearly, awareness must be there. But this has to be followed up also with the skills and competencies and attitudes to deal with cyberspace. And this is where training institutions and others, and other organizations and institutions can come in to assist with the appropriate technical measures that are required on that. And lastly, the appropriate facilities are also required to hedge and support these skills and other kind of things. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for the discussions. We can invite now the Director of Ceremonies to come and take us forward.
Thank you, Professor and Tim. That was excellent. That was excellent. Time is running, but I'm sure we'll have a contingency. Unless if you have to rush somewhere, we'll just have to have a contingency. But in the meantime, help me welcome Mr. Benson Makumire from Grant Thornton, who's one of our sponsors, to just give us a brief talk on their products.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. It's an exciting conference. I'm learning a lot. We just want to stop for a moment and just set up shop here as Grant Thornton so you can know what we offer as a business. And we'll start off with a video that we just want to show about our services, and straight after that, we will walk into services that we offer. There we go. Thank you very much. And now I just wanted to just give you a rough idea. That was who Grant Thornton is in a visual setup. With audio, I just want us to walk through and let you know who Grant Thornton is as we share what we've been going through here. Basically, we offer services that are varied and many. We're talking about transaction advisory services, and I'll go into that in a little while, as well as restructuring and reorganization, tax advisory, audit and forensics, as well as, of course, what we're here for today, which is IT. We also, just to go into detail, starting at the bottom, this is a bit of a different slide, a bit of creativity. We can help you on the transaction advisory services raise capital, whether it's debt or it's equity capital raise. We're there for you. When it comes to mergers and acquisitions, we are there to assist you as well. When it comes to valuations, whether it's equity or enterprise level, we are the people that you can turn to, and we can talk about it, as well as deal negotiations. On the restructuring side, which is probably what we're better known for than any other areas, should you want to be able to start up a business or an old business meeting with another business, we're there to help you reorganize and restructure that. Sometimes it's your governance structures that are not quite the way you want them to be. We can help you set that up as well. And at times you just want to have a gentleman's agreement, an informal workout. We'll be there to assist you with that. The reality of life is that sometimes problems come along and you get a bit sick as a business. We can help you in the form of judicial management or corporate rescue, if you're a regular business, or in the banking sector in the form of curatorship. The truth of the matter is that sometimes when people do get sick and they don't do too well, they die, we go around the corner, take off our doctor suit, and come back wearing black overalls, carrying, wearing gumboots and carrying a shovel, and we give you a decent burial in the form of liquidation and strike-offs, if it should come to that. So that's what we do as well. We also are available for you when it comes to tax services, with a tax, including the restructuring, whether it's your tax advisory, including all your fillings of forms, we're there for you, or even international tax. We strongest and our basis really from the beginning of our startup as a business was on the audit side. We're talking about auditing of financial statements or reviewing of such, or sometimes even just compiling them. Sometimes it's just reporting on your internal control to tell you how strong they are or otherwise, or reviewing what you've got. And of course, finally, the things that we're here for, IT, which many of you know about, pen tests that have been spoken about so much, post-implementation reviews, data analysis, project management, digital investigations and forensics, and of course, what we're specifically here for today, which is cybersecurity. 4 areas that I thought I'd highlight that have been highlighted already throughout the session that are key for cybersecurity in any organization that we need to look at. Number 1 is preparation. And there are a few questions you must ask yourself. Do you understand, and what should you understand about the vulnerabilities of your system? Do you have a security strategy, and what does it say? What are the obligations in case you bring on board a third party? We're talking about risk assessment in terms of threats and risk. We're talking about technical assessments. We're talking about development of policy. Second issue is protection. So you've got preparation, you've got protection. You ask yourself questions like, how do we identify vulnerabilities? How can we design our processes so that there is minimal risk? You're thinking about the future. And really what you're talking about are pen test, design implementation, data protection, data classification, etc. The third element is how do you react if you should be hit by an attack on the cyber front. You're asking yourself, what are options if third-party breaches, for example, the middleman attack that we spoke about earlier on. And really you're talking about monitoring as well as response. And finally, which I love because it has been spoken about so many times, change. We're talking about changing our mindset. How can we raise awareness of risks in organizations? How can we demonstrate to those who pay the money that was spoken about briefly here, that what we are doing is actually worth the money that we're spending? And finally, how do we create, not just in the C-suite, but right across the organization, so that people realize that a strategy and governance and awareness must be the main thing that is important. So this is us as Grant Thornton, whose business is a global outfit filled with a lot of technical experts, whose strong focus is meaningful, actionable advice to clients, and we do it by showing that genuine interest. And ultimately, we want to work with you to unlock your potential for growth. Thank you very much for being with us. We have a small table at the back if you need any more information on it, and we have a team of guys, both on panel and offline, who are able and ready to assist you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much from Grant Thornton. We have got 2 panel discussions that we want to do, so I just want to speed up time. But part of our competition is that we want to find, the indigenous words, or if I can use a very phrase, vernacular words for cyber security. So if you could come up with a name for cyber security in Shona or Ndebele or Tonga or any other name, you may win a prize, which I'll only announce later when I've seen the names. Another one will be crypto hacking. Also, we just want a word. Okay, our next panel discussion is on cyber security and cyber insurance for corporates. If you look at your program, we've just switched the 2 of them because some people have to rush to the airport. I wonder if they are on Air Zimbabwe, then they still need tomorrow. But sorry. So our moderator is Brian Mukudza from Axis Solutions. And then we've got Zai Ninga from Minerva Risk Advisory. And then we've got James Howard, Grant Thornton. And we've got Nilesh Jivrav from Kaspersky, and Kate Zwawanjanja from ZIGF. Okay. What's his name? Okay, you can introduce himself. Okay, so I'll leave it with the moderator, Brian.
Thanks very much. Good afternoon. All protocols observed, the PS. I think there was a question that a prize is going to be won. I think there was one defender who was very good in football. I think he was called Chivaro. So I think cyber security Chivaro. So the prize is mine. Okay. Okay. Gentlemen, I think I've been told that I have to stick to 5 minutes. I hope my teacher did well. Dr. Kabanda is actually my teacher. I'm not lying. Please, if you could clap for him, he has done very well in the ICT industry. So our panel is going to be focusing on cyber security and insurance for corporates. So what I would do is, for the sake of time, I'll allow each panelist to introduce themselves, what they do, and immediately get into what they want to present. If there are any panelists who had maybe some prepared material from the organizers, if it is possible to then share that afterwards with the other, because within 5 minutes you might not have enough time to go through the material that you want to go through. So what I will do is, let me start with Kate, and unfortunately I don't have the mic, so you have to use my mic. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Maswirase, it always pleases me to be in a room of security people, because I'm not a security person, I'm a criminal. You can't, because you can't catch me. When I say I'm a criminal, we do everything that criminals do in terms of breaking into your systems. But the difference is we break into your systems when you allow us to break into the systems for the sake of securing your systems. The whole purpose of cyber security, cyber legislation, is because they are criminals. Isn't it? Because they are criminals. A lot of times our dimension and focus is focused on securing without understanding the mindset, the activities, the technologies, the skills, the zeal, the passions, and the interest of the people we are securing against. Hence, my approach to cybersecurity is bringing in the dimension, not from a security perspective, but from a criminal perspective. What is it we as criminals in courts look for in a system, not as a security professional? When you have a firewall, don't look for the firewall, look for the loophole that makes the firewall work. So my purpose here is twofold. Currently, I'm the chairman of Zimbabwe Internet Governance Forum, ZIGF, and beyond that, I'm a cybercrime criminologist, which helps security people to patch their holes. Three things that I would like to push for. One is for us to have a vulnerability management program as a nation. Two is for us as corporates to have a vulnerability management programs of how do people outside the organization identify vulnerabilities within our systems, and we have reward programs for those things, and also those aspects being legislated. Two, there's a lot of committees and structures that have been put in Zimbabwe, but looking at the Constitution, there's a section like 339. It differentiates between advice and consultation. When it says somebody has to be given advice on by a committee or by a team, it's not the duty of the minister to make a decision if they should follow the advice. They should do as the advice says. But we find most of our legislation, they say the minister in consultation. What means we are setting up institutions whereby the minister just reads what you give them and they make their own independent decision. Henceforth, they are wasting a lot of resources, whilst the decision and way forward still vests within the minister. So I advocate that we move from consultations to advice, which if a committee is set, a team is set, what they advise, it has to be implemented. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is James Howard. I represent Grant Thornton International. My background is that of a CIO of a IT advisory person, servicing clients, talking about IT security, IT governance, IT operations, ITIL, all of those wonderful things. And I want to commend you for the conversations that I've heard here today, because I think, you know, my fellow panelists and the kind of topics that you've spoken about are very important messages. And the one thing that I've learned over the years in my roles is that if you have a message that is important, you have to keep on passing on that message, because at some point someone will listen. And I understand how difficult it is for you as technologists or the IT environment to sell this concept and the message to your C-suite people and to the people who need to give you money to spend. I want to encourage you to continue with that, because the message is important. I want to encourage you to do that because my interest in cybersecurity started when I had to look at a report that showed that the organization that I was representing at that point in time was compromised. And that was when I realized that there are people out there in the world that I don't know and who don't know me, yet they have the ability to have a massive impact on the organization that I work for or represent. People who have malicious intent, who might want to steal from us, misuse that information, and that scared me. It worried me, made me feel vulnerable. And that's when the road started, I think, to have a look at what we need to change in the organizations that we interact with to get that message across. Because the message needs to start at the top. If your CEO doesn't believe in it, you're going to struggle. I think a lot of you referred to the medical aid example that one of my fellow panelists mentioned earlier. I can promise you now, the CEO of that company has taken notice. If they didn't have firewalls and antivirus before, I can promise you they are looking at it now. I think the challenge would be for you technologists to get the message across that it's key for business. It's a business risk not to do it. It's a business risk not to address these risks. And when we look at how to address a risk at a high level is we plan, right? And you guys are in that stage. You're planning. You're going through talking to stakeholders. There's really intelligent, competent people in this room. You're busy with a planning process. That's fantastic. At some point, we're going to have to go into that process of starting to prevent. We're going to take our plan, do the vulnerability management, do the firewall management, do the SOC, all the things that we need to do as best we possibly can. I'm not an insurance expert, but what I've learned is that if you identify a risk, then you insure the risk. I have a car, someone bumps into me, I want to know that someone's going to pay me in order to help me recover from what happened. But it doesn't mean that the insurer gives me free rein to go and drive like a lunatic. At the same time, when I look at it from a cyber perspective, I want to do business. I want to stay in business. Therefore, I need to address the risks. I need to get my plans in place. I need to get action. Do everything that I can to prevent this. But acknowledge the fact that there's a likelihood that at some point I'm going to fail. And if I fail, like the medical aid example, I'm going to incur costs. My systems are going to be down. My clients are going to question, where are you? Why can't I reach you? Should I take my business elsewhere? My reputational damage is going to have a major issue. I need to go into the market with public relations people to get the right message across. Those things cost money. So, congratulations on all of you for doing this. It is a fantastic thing, and I think it is wonderful to do. I just want to leave one thing with you that I have struggled with in the past, back in South Africa, is that I found it very difficult to report a crime. I found it extremely difficult to report a cyber crime specifically, because it's seen as a faceless crime. It's not a faceless crime. There's always a victim and a perpetrator. So what I would encourage you to do as a nation is to rise and to say, guys, we need to make it easy for people who have been victims of these crimes to report it. We need to have structures that will allow them to get that message to us, and for us to take advantage of these structures that you want to put in place. People who are going to track and do all of those things. Because if we don't do it, there's no repercussions. It will continue. If it happens to me, I'm too embarrassed to let anybody know. I can't report it to the authorities. These guys are going to continue, and we're going to have more and more of these conferences and buy more software and do more things, and we just can't get to them. So that's my 5 cents worth. Keep on doing it. It is fantastic, and I'd love to be a part of that.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nilesh. I'm from Kaspersky Lab in South Africa. I think for us at the moment, we come up with a conclusion here when we look at cybersecurity. There's basically 2 types of companies out there. Those that know that they've been hacked, and those that don't know that they are facing a major threat. Now, how do you alleviate that? How do you actually build from a CEO level downwards structures that help implement different layers of cybersecurity. It's through awareness, it's through campaigns within your organization that you actually need to have people trained up in specifics around cybersecurity to be enabled to say that, okay, I know that I shouldn't open this or I shouldn't do that. But don't care, because we see that some of the organizations that come under threat also face the insider, the disgruntled employee, or someone that feels that, you know, I don't care for the company anymore and I want to take advantage of what I could either sell or reap benefits on. So these kind of threats are becoming more and more difficult also to track and to understand what's happening. But when we look at cybersecurity in a country layer, we got to look at it from a national security. It's not just a you or a me or a private sector or a government sector that needs to go and implement security because, you know, we citizens in the country, we should feel safe by our government. This is an initiative that should be taken from a national so that everyone gets involved. It's everyone that lends initiative, lends ideas to security and be able to actually develop skills for that, you know, to be able to pull together national CERT operations, to be able to pull together monitoring centers that are able to track events that are happening at a national layer. Because trust me, today, some way or the other, each of your private sector organizations here are dealing some way or the other with government. And if government is at threat, you are also just at the same threat, because some way or the other, there's links to that government institute. There's links that you are using. Now, you know, look at what's going on now currently in the news with the Iranian attacks on infrastructure. And this happened at a national layer, not at a local private company or private government institute. It happened at a national layer where the infrastructure was vulnerable. Those kind of things are looking very, very prominent to happen all over the world. So, having done some research before entering this panel, I noticed that Zimbabwe as a country is number 120 on the most attacked through the world. Now, if we look at ITU and we look at what ITU is saying, you know, building operations, building capability within government, within private sector organizations, that needs to start taking place. And ITU is driving those kind of initiatives globally. Zimbabwe as a country, sorry to say though, are not even ranked by ITU within the continent as a top member. So I think for what we are saying is that there's initiatives that can be put in place. There's opportunities for us to work together and collaborate to actually help you through your journey, to help you develop that capability at both national, private sector capabilities.
Okay, thank you. My name is Wadi, and I'm here representing Minerva Risk Advisors. Minerva is a reinsurance, and insurance and management consultants firm. So basically, what we do is we do portfolio structuring for insurance companies, for our clients in terms of insurance. Unlike my fellow panelists here, I'm not a criminal, but I'm actually here to assist those that may have befallen criminal acts around the cyber area. I think maybe what I'll do is I'll just start by offering solutions. I think what has been said throughout the day has been the problems that are associated with cyber, cyber risk, cyber this, cyber that. But what has not been said is in the event that you fall foul to the cyber issues, what is your recourse after all else has failed? I'm glad to announce that from a Minerva point of view, in terms of most of our clients that are susceptible to cyber, before the announcement of the national IT policy, I think by the ministry, we had already started a journey where we had actually started designing policies, insurance policies that respond to cyber attacks. You realize that I think in Zimbabwe, I think like one of the fellow panelists said earlier on, there's no more cash. So if you're a bank, for example, where does your major risk lie? It simply lies with your cyber attacks. So you find that I think for you to then to access the product of insurance, you actually need to embark on a particular journey. What journey am I talking about? I think like what he said, just because you have got insurance doesn't mean you can just drive any way that you want. So the issue with cyber design and cyber insurance is that you ought to have your risk management measures in place. So you have got to invest first and foremost in terms of risk management. And key to that, I would like to congratulate, I think, my previous panelist, Mr. Gwatizo. I think he highlighted on a very important point that sooner or later, if you look at the international global trends, for example, if you are the CEO, you are liable for any cyber attacks that actually befall your organization. And as such, from an Aon point of view, because we're a correspondent broker to Aon International, you find that the prediction is that inevitably, because you are being sued for issues that arise as a result of your own cyber failures as a CEO, you have got to escalate the reporting line of your chief risk officer or your chief information officer. Gone are the days when CEOs had simply to delegate to a third tier reporting line, and yet these are issues that are very real in terms of the business. I'll just give you a few nuggets in the interest of time. According to the Poneman Institute survey, it's shocking that 24% of our global clients, for example, they've got cyber insurance. And yet, if you then ask the rest of those that participated in the survey, they'll tell you that 87% of them accept that cyber is a very serious threat in terms of top 10 of their threats to their business. So there's a mismatch there between what needs to be done and what's actually happening. And unfortunately for CEOs, again, I have got bad news for them. Internationally, in terms of legislation, in other jurisdictions, for example, cyber risks or any breach to the cyber security of your organization has actually resulted in what is called a directors and officers liability claim being lodged against you as a director or an officer of a particular company. So what does this all information say about cyber? It simply means that as corporate citizens, you just have to put it up there. Just two issues. In terms of the cyber insurance design, it's basically in two ways. You have got your first part damages. Your first part damages, you're simply looking where your system is breached. As a result of the breach of the system, you lose information asset, for example. It needs to be indemnified. You lose business interruption. Imagine your continued absence to do business for a week. What does it mean in terms of your gross profit? All those issues have got to be taken into account when you are designing your insurance program. Then there's the second part, which is the third party coverage of the policy that we are talking about. The third party is covering such things. I think the previous panelists spoke about the medical aid breaches of confidentiality. In other jurisdictions, that's a clear-cut case where those whose rights have been infringed by the inadvertent publication of their statuses can simply go after those medical aid companies and seek recourse. So what does it mean from an insurance? Really need to be indemnified against such issues. In the interest of time, I'll probably just stop here and maybe take questions should there be any from the floor. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. So what we'll do is we'll entertain questions, and I see there are already hands that have popped up. There is a gentleman here with a nice laptop that says Rocket. I don't know what is in that laptop, right? Then another one. So I think I'll also do 4. I think I'm learning fast. I think I'll also do 4 questions. The other one. Okay, right. That's number 2. Oh, sorry. Okay, 3. 4th one. Ladies going once, twice. Okay, gone. All right. So so we entertain the three questions. But whilst I think maybe the 4th person is thinking, it just made me think about the whole issue about CEOs and sorry, ladies, right? I think there was a 3-year-old. He asks his mom, right? it was referring to the maid, can Sisi go and fetch money from your handbag? The mom said, no, 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 no. You can't go and fetch money from the handbag. I don't trust you. The boy said, but mom, you trust here to stay with me. What is more valuable, your money or myself? So I hope CEOs are not the same way where they want to be signing checks, but they don't care about the network or the cyber security for their organizations, right? So you can go first, sir.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Kundai. I'm the digital mercenary for BitCrack Cybersecurity. And one of my tasks when conducting security research on the internet is finding breaches where data has leaked, essentially, and then reporting. But the issue I get most of the time is you find out, oh, this individual has leaked 1 million records for this health service provider. You go to the health service provider and tell them, like, you have an issue. They will stonewall you. They will shut themselves down. They're presented with people with suits who are very angry with you. So you then now have to change tack and say, okay, I'm sending you an email with a breach notice. Please respond within 2 weeks or I'll go public, so that they fix their issues. My question is, how best do security researchers engage with the organizations, especially when you insure with the insurance providers, because they don't have any point of contact? I'm pretty sure it's easier to contact the firm's auditors than it is to contact the firm themselves.
Thanks very much. I think Kate, you had said that you are a criminal, so I want to respond to that. Then also, I think I'll take the other question, but any of the panelists, you can also just pop in. I think I'll take the second question.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jaco, and I'm here with Viking Techno Intel. I've got a two-pronged question. Firstly, from James from Grant Thornton. Given that you have spoken that there is need to have infrastructure that are in place to prevent vulnerabilities, what then is your suggestion for an emerging economy like Zimbabwe? And to Ms. Weda, I think, from Minerva, you have highlighted some of the solutions that you said are in place. Have you considered capacity building initiatives as part of your solutions that include university think tanks that harness that energy and those mindsets from the young and emerging young IT experts that enable you to essentially spot these threats and also help you to share this knowledge among other corporates that are in the industry, and thereby be able to prevent these attacks before they become a reactive situation than a proactive one? Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Robert, also from HIT. My question is directed towards the gentleman from Minerva. I guess the panel can also assist him on that. Since we're drafting the cybersecurity strategy for Zimbabwe, from your perspective, as you highlighted that in some cases the CEOs bear the brunt of the blame when they have been breached in some way, what do you suggest that we incorporate within this strategy that aligns with international standards, as you have mentioned?
Right, thanks very much. So what we'll do is I hope that was the last question, right? So what we'll do is we'll allow the panelists, and I'll allow Ked to address the first one, which was to do with how best do security researchers, and probably I think wanted to call himself a whistleblower, how best does he deal with that?
All right, thank you. Let me make it clear before I get into your question. To test a corporate system without authorization is a criminal offense. Whether you found loopholes or you didn't, but without authorization, the law should take its course. Is that clear? whether it's vulnerable or not, to attack a system researching or not, it's a criminal offense. Currently in the laws of Zimbabwe and internationally. But how do we move from making it a criminal offense? I proposed a national vulnerability management program or a database, and corporates can incorporate what we call internal vulnerability management programs, where first level, they can have what we call bounty hunting. Company X, X Solutions, will publicize if a hacker, a criminal, anyone else finds vulnerability on our platforms, platform XYZ will give you reward for that. So you can research on those platforms without being a criminal offender. They are men of those. To the extent that look at a program which is called Hacker One, it's a United States program. A lot of the big corporations, the Fortune 100s, are doing that. And recently, for interest's sake, there was Hack DOD, which is Hack the Department of Defense. And in that Hack DOD, which was open to anyone in the world, there were over 150 vulnerabilities which were found, and people were paid for those things. Second level, we have our usual penetration tests. Some are regulatory, and some are for compliance issues. If it's in the financial sector, twice a year, so forth. But the issue now is, if a penetration test is done today, it gives the snapshot of the system and vulnerabilities for today. Once the report comes tomorrow, that thing has already expired. So there's need now to encourage researchers and give authority to researchers to do it legally. But if you do it legally and you are caught or reports, they can take you to the police and you need a cyber lawyer.
Okay. I don't know whether Mr. Batito agrees with that. Okay, but right. Do you want to also give?
I just want to talk to one of the. There was a question about who do I report the vulnerabilities to? Who do I report that the gentleman here was talking about, the data leaks? I think it comes back to what I said earlier. That's an important message. And if nobody listens, you've got to keep on getting across, because at some point someone will listen. And I guess what I'm trying to say to you is that if the company doesn't want to listen and the auditor does, then maybe that's where you want to go. Because I think the auditors at the very least is looking at it from a risk and reputational perspective for them as well. So whoever wants to listen, that's who you should give that message to. But the auditors typically will. So if the company doesn't want to, it should be your first point, but the auditor should be a good bash. Then there was a question here about vulnerabilities as well, maybe just to add on to what was mentioned here. I think vulnerability management fits into a whole attitude or culture within your organization. And I think it becomes more difficult when we are in bring your own device territories, and all those kind of environments. I think if our policy is firm, if we have an organization that has a security policy that says, guys, we will control A to B to C. Nothing that is not under our control will be in our environment. If you bring a laptop here that is not part of our organization, it goes into a separate VLAN, for example, where you can access nothing. If your antivirus is not updated, the Kaspersky guy will love it. You go into a separate VLAN until you're updated. I think we need to put down our foot as IT people as well, because I think that's sometimes what we're not good at doing. We want to please everybody. Oh, we want to bring your machine from home. That's okay. Just come bring it in. We should learn to say no. We should learn to say, guys, these are our policies. Our policies are, this is what needs to happen. We patch once a week on this, twice a week on this, once a month on this. If you don't comply, you're off. Goodbye. Until you're ready, and we will help you to get there. That's my view on that.
So, a couple of things that I've noticed, especially when it comes to collaboration, okay? Collaboration is key between industry. So, whether you're a private company or a AV vendor like myself, that collaboration makes it very important when it comes to research and threat analysis. Like Kate was saying, okay, something that's now becoming a very new trend is threat hunting. and bounty hunting. Okay, I mean, these are becoming sort of skill sets that the 18 and 19-year-olds or even younger guys have that capability. But if there's no collaboration for you to actually go and report stuff on, it's like the gentleman said here, you know, someone will listen at the end of the day. So whether it be the auditor or whether it's going to be Mr. CEO, somewhere along the line there's going to be a responsibility, whether it comes in the form of a penalty, whether it comes in the form of some kind of violation, kind of ticket, if you want to call it that. It's going to come. And it's going to come to bite when the attackers actually know that, hold on, there's a loop in there for me, and I can get there. The criminal mind is open to investigation all over. So, give you an example, I mean, something that we as Kaspersky done in South Africa, and this was with collaboration with the South African police, okay? We found a couple of key generating servers in the South African service provider areas, okay? Similar to what you're talking about. But who do I go to? How do I handle this? And our first thought was that, okay, let's take it to South African police first and make them understand what we found first. So, you know, the bounty was found. We found it. There's a loop there. Who do we go to next? So we go to the service provider, and we explain to the service provider that such and such is happening. But this all had to be done in conjunction with South African police, because it's the police's duty to go and knock down that door, bring down that server. It's not my job. It's the laws that needs to take that and progress it forward. So I hope I could help you there.
So still the issue of a national policy comes in. I'll allow, I think from Minerva, I think there was a question there, and also the issue of the young. I'm happy that we have got the young in the house. Maybe you can just also address that.
Okay, thank you. I'll address his question first, and then I'll come to the engineer's question second. I think in terms of capacity building, I'm glad to say that as an insurance advisory service organization, predominantly our role is to provide advice and risk management and then structure insurance programs. But you realize that in terms of capacity building for the young, like you were asking, I'm glad I also have ICT lady with me. She actually has more, she has got more students on attachment than I have from an operations point of view. So from a capacity, a recognition that we have got a real problem from the ICT point of view, it's actually there. I think from a Minerva point of view, we are playing our part. I would expect our PMSEC to give me a round of applause. at least we have been recognizing that there's need for us to be tackling this problem before the government even implemented the ICT plan. In terms of coming back to you, engineer, in terms of what do you think we need to incorporate as a strategy for, you know, the national strategy, I think it starts with simple things, like I highlighted earlier on. The drivers of the economy, who are the CEOs and the FDs, they need to recognize that ICT is no longer just one of those roles that, you know, is being played in an organization. ICT now has got to be an ExCo issue. Whoever is running with ICT has got to have, if not a direct reporting line, but a dotted reporting line to the CEO. The CEO, unfortunately or fortunately, I think from where I'm sitting, because at the end of the day, this is a national issue, they've got to have, you know, they've got to into the national policies. Why is it important that CEOs buy into these national policies? You know, I think Fry earlier on, I think highlighted certain websites that have been sort of been attempted to be hacked by the hackers. So imagine we have got government agencies whose are not secure at all. And the PMSECs, they don't even, like, you know, pay attention to these things. I think our own engineer Kondishora, I think highlighted this to say, I wish my colleagues in government recognized that there's need, we've got a problem. So unless we start at that level, unfortunately, we're not going to make too much traction. I haven't really checked in terms of our audience without really looking down upon those that have come to represent their organizations. I will struggle to count the number that have actually come to this conference. That in itself it shows the level at which the CEOs believe in terms of ranking where ICT policy is supposed to be. So what am I saying? I think from where I'm sitting, I'm happy that contrary to the norms and cultures of the Zimbabwean government officials, I think our own engineer has sat through the seminar itself throughout to understand what's going on with the corporates. I think that's the start. But I think going on, I think like I alluded to earlier on, the issue in terms of designing an insurance program that responds, there's got to be a give and take. You know, organizations have got to be prepared to do the penetration test that, like what my colleagues have been saying, so that you understand where you are falling short. That's the most critical thing. And then, you know, as a management committee, you then say to your, you know, risk advisors, okay, we have got this penetration test, which is simply indicating where we are falling short. How then do we have an insurance program, which is a backup to a risk management program that has already started as a starting point? So to answer you in short, engineer, I think it has to start with the government departments themselves recognizing and understanding that the national policy is there to serve a purpose. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you. So just another round of applause for our panelists. Like I said, my takeaway, key takeaways, I think from this is just one issue I think Kedwe was addressing, that you need also to have a criminal mind, but we don't know how that criminal mind is going to go. But as a nation, we are being encouraged to have a center of where we can respond. The whole issue of moral suasion, can we, PS, have kind of an H-metro for organizations, because everyone feels, no, I don't want my picture taken when I'm in a compromise position. Can that also be applied to that? And James said, keep on passing the message, keep on talking, keep on talking. We need more CEOs in here. And disgruntled employees, handle the issue of disgruntled employees, who are the guys who are coming in here. But also from the audience, I've also picked up the issue to say, people are saying, how do we go about kind of making people aware? I like the question where he said, how do we become whistleblowers? I think that question he was told because he's sitting next to you, to then also ask that particular question to say, how do the youngsters also come in and help with ICT? But we think that the youngsters are here. We have got students from HIT who are also in our audience. So thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Our last
we need to check. Yeah.
Panel discussion. We will finish. This is what we call contingency time. We're running into a schedule overrun, so we're just going to use a contingency time to discuss the last panel discussion, which is cyber security in the banking and financial services sector. The moderator is Mr. Peresa from RBZ, and then we've got Mr. G. Zwandas Sara from PricewaterhouseCoopers, and from the Bankers Association of Zimbabwe, we've got Mr. Lee Masuka, and from Golix, we've got Mr. T. Sibanda. If any of you are leaving now, please just remember tomorrow you just do a fresh registration, and also you bring your program. We're not printing another one again, and also bring your tags again. Mr. Chiperis.
Right. Good afternoon, colleagues. We'll try to do justice to the topic, but within a very limited time. We'll try to compress this in the next 30 minutes. Chiperesa Oliver, as you have been told, is my name, from the Reserve Bank Financial Intelligence Unit. And I think I'll just have my panelists quickly introduce themselves because I've not had that opportunity to get to know them.
Okay, my name is Lima Suka. I am coming from Medbank, but as well I'm representing the chairman's office from the BAZ ICT. I am a certified ethical hacker as well as a certified data center professional, among other certifications that I do have.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Gibbon Chandasara from PwC. PwC is a professional services company, primarily focusing on auditing, but we've got a risk assurance services unit, which is within our advisory services. So yes, we do focus on penetration testing, vulnerabilities assessments, IT governance issues, board governances, amongst other things. I think today I'm going to be speaking to you about monitoring. I think there's been a lot of talk on issues relating to cybersecurity, but there isn't much talk on how do we go about monitoring those devices that we have on all our networks. All right, thank you.
Hello, my name is Trevor Sivanda. I'm the former developer from Towards the Defender antivirus project. I'm the leader for the Open Web Application Security Project, Bulawayo chapter. And I'm here as the security engineer for Colleagues, which is a blockchain startup based in Harare. So I'm also in security. I hold offensive security certified professional. I specialize in penetration tests and do other security-related auditing. Today, I'll be here to just give a brief background on the security aspects of blockchain technology and how it applies within the banking sector.
Okay, thank you. I think I'll start with the gentleman from Medbank. We are talking about the financial sector as a whole, and perhaps you want to give us your perspective, whether your perspective on the magnitude, nature and magnitude of the cybersecurity threat in the financial sector. Perhaps you can start and give us that perspective.
Okay, thank you. So I think almost every one of us uses financial sector somehow. And one of the most interesting trends that have been happening, not only in Africa, but in Zimbabwe as well, is that the dependency of transactions on cash has changed. And you see there is a great shift in terms of transactions, online transactions. Now you can see a lot of card transactions, volumes of mobile transactions is increasing. Of course, in terms of e-commerce, we are still to move and improve on that. But I think in general, almost every one of us has done a transaction without using cash. That is from your mobile, from your computer, or from a public place like an internet cafe. So I think in general, financial services sector has not been spared in terms of cyber security. It's one of the areas, I think there is a study that was done which revealed that in the financial services sector, it's actually 3 times more than any other sector in terms of attacks, cyber attacks. So that generally means that in terms of security, we as the financial services players, we have to play a much more bigger role in terms of securing, because we do not only hold the money for the clients, but we also keep your personal information. You entrust a financial institution to say, okay, this is my date of birth, this is my salary, this is where I work. So all that information is securely kept within the financial institutions. So you find that when attackers they are coming, they are not only targeting financial data, they are targeting your personal information. I think we might see that in Zimbabwe, the trend is not in terms of attack, not necessarily because we are very secure. Of course, I trust that we are secure. We have had, I think, the central bank, they've got their enforcements, and I think they are doing very well in terms of enforcing policies that do adhere to the changes that are happening in the cyber world. But I think it also, we also recorded a lower rate in terms of cyber attacks in the financial institution, because you find that right now, for example, we have fewer transactions in terms of MasterCard and Visa. Those are the most targeted. MasterCard, Visa, China Union Pay. Those are the most targeted bees in terms of cyber attacks, because people really want to get the money. But because of this challenge in terms of the Nostro funding that we have had in the country, a few banks, they are really permitting their cards to work on Visa and MasterCard. So we find that because most of these attackers, they are not necessarily in Zimbabwe. Some of them, they're actually in the US. Some of them are actually in China. So for them to actually target our bond notes, they know that they will not be able to use them wherever they are. So most of the attackers that we find are actually local based. But we also do have some that are trying to attack the financial institutions for just defamation, so that, I mean, your image is defamed. So such instances are happening, but as banks, what we are doing now at BSZ level, right now we have got a paper that is going through where we actually are advocating to have at least a standard that we do have in the financial services sector, not only for banks, but we also have microfinances. We also have players like those that deal with mobile transactions, who are still regulated by Potras, but where we are lobbying that I think they should be regulated by the Reserve Bank, because the Reserve Bank is doing quite well in terms of financial policies, I mean policies in terms of security. But I think in terms of the shift that is happening in the country in terms of investment, you see that most of the systems that financial institutions they are actually buying or purchasing, they actually come with reporting tools. They actually come with tracking tools. Of course, one speaker mentioned the issue of necessarily relying on the system itself. It's not only the infrastructure, but we also have to look at the people that are there. We have to have the right people. Right now, when I was trained in the UK for certified ethical hacking, it is not only in Zimbabwe, it is not only in Africa where we do have disgruntled employees as the greatest risk. Those guys who are internal, when they know that they want to, they can expose information. We know that right now, in terms of customer data, it's encrypted, but there are there's certain information that might not be encrypted. And I'm going to leave the bank now. If I'm not ethical, what can I do? I can sell information. But those are things that I think with the coming of the law, the cyber law, etc., those are things that we should have at least a traceable record to say, if I'm going to be criminalized, what is there? So those are things that we are looking at BSZ level to at least come up with a document that speaks to what is happening. Things are changing every day. We might think that we are left behind, but soon and very soon, you will find that if people find that there is a lot in terms of vulnerabilities in the country, we might be infested, because people are looking for money, people are looking to damage. Right now, I was reading on an attack that is happening in Russia and Iran, whereby some attackers, most likely they're coming from the US, but they're actually attacking the Cisco devices in those countries. They are saying that, hey, do not interfere with our elections. So those are things that actually happen. Some of them, they are politically motivated. So in terms of looking back at the financial services sector, we do not look at the financial data. We look beyond that. I think the other part that we obviously need to look at right now. Excellent, thank you. So in summary, what we're saying is that as financial service sector, we are investing. I think we are expecting by 2025, it is indicating that the increase in investment towards cybersecurity will be by 40%. So it's something that I think players around this table, players in this hall, we have to assist each other. We are customers of financial institutions. So let's assist each other to secure our data, to provide services in a genuine manner. Let us not be vendors who come, like what is probably happening with Cisco now, to say, okay, a solution, but tomorrow you are the weak link because I've integrated you. So I think let us be a united country. Let us provide solutions that will protect our data, our relatives' data, our friends' data, etc. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Perhaps just quickly, I didn't quite get just in one sentence. I just want to know how well prepared banks are, I think, about this problem of ransom attacks. I know you talked about the threats to customers' accounts and everything, but ransom attacks targeting banks themselves, the customers' data, and asking for ransom, is this a real threat in Zimbabwe, or if it is, are banks well prepared for that?
Yeah, obviously we are not spared. Probably one of the most sector that is at most risk, because we have got the money. In terms of preparation, like I said, I think we have invested as banks, and we are drafting a policy that will speak to the national policy, how we can criminalize such activities. Well, ransomwares, they might not necessarily originate from here. There's people who might probably be looking for money to say, okay, for you to recover your data, you have to pay this and that. We haven't really encountered such, but we have tried to invest even in standard protection mechanism, your IPS, your IDS, your antivirus, even in terms of firewalls, and in terms of policy in the banks, individual policy. The Reserve Bank also is assisting in terms of making sure that our policy speaks to such things and will be protected against these ransomwares.
Thank you, BAZ. I think logically I'll move to Pricewaterhouse. You told us you are going to speak largely about monitoring. You are the guys who advise your clients. Perhaps you want to give us the perspective of what you are advising your clients in that respect.
Thank you. I think due to the nature of high reliance on technology, we find that most organizations now have devices and systems that generate lots of logs, huge files of that track activities that happen. Now, it's practically not possible for individuals to go through these logs on a daily basis or however often that the policy of each organization dictate. So we find that in that space, there is a lot of lacking, or rather we are lagging behind in issues of trying to stay abreast. Now, obviously in the financial sector, my colleague here mentioned that maybe now is that we don't have much US dollars in the market, but I believe financial institutions store a lot of confidential data, intellectual property, KYC information. Now, this type of information is obviously of interest to a number of people. Now, what is the best way of then monitoring these if we can't do it manually, right? I think we have also noticed a rise in mobile computing. There's a lot of organizations that allow people to connect their phones onto company networks. People bring in their personal laptops. But what control do we have over this? So as PwC, we've been pushing to automate the monitoring of all these devices, and also this trust is also coming from the fact that cybersecurity is quite rampant. So we've been advocating for what we call security operation centers. Now, these are essentially units which are manned by skilled people, and with the type of devices that are used in this monitoring, you can automate the monitoring of all your network activities on the network. Now, by automating, what are we talking about? You set policies that obviously prevent any cyber attacks. You also set policies that can automate the detection of any attempts and the analyzing of these particular attempts and how best to respond. Now, by doing this, what you're essentially doing is that you create avenues of notifying all the relevant key people within your organization of what's been happening, and this gives you the power to monitor all the attack vectors that are happening every day. Now, I think one of the panelists spoke about the number of attacks that have been generated on a daily basis. We can't keep up. I think the other gentleman spoke about once you've done a penetration testing, this is a snapshot of your network at that particular point in time. Now, when you implement a security operation center, which we sometimes call a SOC, this is an ongoing process. It's happening 24/7, and then you've got a team of people that are continuously monitoring and analyzing that data and the results of this. So this is something that we've been advocating, and we really want the financial institutions and many other organizations, including government, the RBZ themselves, to seriously look into this. And this is probably the better way and probably the best way of us to handle cybersecurity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, PwC. Can you just tell me what has been I'm sure you've been trying to talk to your clients about this. What has been the response? Have your clients been inclined to taking this initiative of yours seriously, or maybe not to the level that you would want at this stage?
Thank you. I mean, generally, the uptake is quite low, and I think generally even the seriousness of cybersecurity at this point in time in the country is quite low. I think the awareness that was spoken about, that drive needs to happen at a faster pace, and once that awareness has been created and the CEOs, the executives, the C-suite have bought into the ideas, I think then maybe the organizations and the nation can move at a faster pace and at a better pace as well.
Right, okay, thank you very much. We now get to the guy from Golix, the cryptocurrency guys. He's going to talk to us a little bit about the blockchain technology. I'm not sure how that could be. He's going to explain how he will link it to security. Of course, I have heard about ransom attackers demanding payment in Bitcoin. Maybe that's a different angle. Because it is obviously extremely difficult to trace payments made by Bitcoin. Perhaps as you do your brief, perhaps you might just want to touch on that a little bit, whether this has been occurring in Zimbabwe, and if so, what is your perspective? But generally, I know you had a perspective and angle that you wanted to approach the topic.
Okay, thank you for that. So most of the time, when I get to conferences or something like that, people don't understand cryptocurrencies. They think cryptocurrency and blockchain are two completely different things. Now, to explain it in more detail, I would like to say what exactly is a currency. We place trust upon something. We place trust upon the Reserve Bank that they'll create some form of representation of value which we'll use to represent, which we'll use to trade with. So the problem, and this has been going around today, is that you're fundamentally flawed. As a panel of security people will tell you that our job is exploiting humans. We can be exploiting humans either through social engineering, calling you directly, or we can be exploiting a mistake which a developer made. So humans are fundamentally flawed, and as long as there are humans, there will always be issues. So what the blockchain allows is that it solves the problem of immutability. That is to say, once we have something, we want it to go unchanged. So for example, just this morning I was reading of a startup which allows, if I upload maybe 10 different photos of you with different lighting conditions and different angles of your face, they can recreate a video of you as if you are speaking, even copy your voice. And they managed to do this on Donald Trump and Barack Obama. So then the question now is, what is reality and what is not reality? Because ultimately, we're getting to a point where as technology converges, it will be hard for us to distinguish between the two, what is real and what is fake. So what we do as a blockchain startup is that we take that level of trust away from humans and we put it in mathematics. So as a cryptocurrency startup, what we are doing is we are saying our money is numbers, mathematics. So with this value on that particular mathematics, we're saying a good way to explain cryptocurrencies to people in blockchain is I have an equation. Most of us are familiar with polynomials up to maybe n factors. We know that there's only a certain number of numbers which will produce a valid equation, right, to make it balance out. So as a blockchain, as a cryptocurrency, we are saying there's only a limited amount of numbers which you can plug into that equation to come out with a valid equation. And those numbers are distributed to people, and those numbers now have value. So those numbers with value are the ones which are distributing around. So as cryptocurrency, as a blockchain, what we at colleagues, what we do is we allow people to buy and trade with cryptocurrencies. So basically, they're trading in numbers. That's all they're doing. We are just people trading in equations. We're saying, okay, here's a valid equation. Here's numbers which solve this equation. I'll give him my numbers for his numbers, or I'll give him money for his numbers. So that's what we're doing. And because of that, we're solving a fundamental problem which exists in Africa for now, for example, is that Africa is always lagging behind in technology. And blockchain allows us to solve lots of problems in, for example, in corruption. How do we verify security? For the current banking system, you have to trust someone and hope that the trust is maintained. Our technology, and we survive because we believe in mutual distrust. So because of mutual distrust, that's how we're able to sustain as a company. We believe that you shouldn't trust anyone, and someone should prove themselves. You are guilty until proven innocent. That's the motto in which we go by. So the speaker already alluded to the fact that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are used, for example, by criminals. So you have criminals which are demanding numbers so that you can unlock your computer, and then they'll trade those numbers for money somewhere else. Blockchain is a technology like all others, and nothing which happens on the internet is untrackable. So if you go online and you demand Bitcoin as ransom, there's still a paper trail. And the question now becomes, is it worth it for law enforcement to pursue someone for $10 who used a blockchain for $10 when it takes too much effort for us to be able to do that? So it's definitely one of the avenues which a lot of people have misconceptions about. But if you buy Bitcoins or if you demand Bitcoins in the hope that you won't get caught, you are wrong. There are people like us who understand the technology, and we will catch you. But for currently within the African context and as an emerging economy, we don't have many professionals who are able to go through the blockchain and be able to understand the transactions, how they went.
Yeah, I'll give you, I'm sorry, I know it's very interesting. Is it possible to wind it up in 2 more minutes? Obviously, maybe it's because I can't really follow it in particular, but I hope everyone is following. But is it possible? Yeah. Or you want 5 minutes?
2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes. Thanks.
Okay, so I've been cut short, but basically, the main thing I'd like to touch on for what we're doing at Colleagues now is that for our side now, our use case, what most people are using us for example, right now, all of us, we want to use our MasterCards, we want to buy things online, and then we have to either buy US dollars so that we can put them in the banks, and then we can be able to use that. But with blockchain, what we've been allowing people to buy things from outside the country using their bond notes. So you take your bond notes, you buy Bitcoins from us, and then there are people from outside the country who are accepting those Bitcoins. They're accepting those numbers, and they can produce value for them. So that's our use case, and we've been functional for quite some time now, and we have a lot of progress which is happening. We currently set up our first Bitcoin ATM, which our punchline is the only ATM with money in Zimbabwe at the moment. So we're in a disruptive field. We're not changing the financial sector. We're simply adding more trust to it, and we're hoping to be around for the future to come.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll ask you one last question before we open the discussion. Obviously, you have convinced us very well that perhaps if we put more trust in mathematics, it is better than trusting humans because of human error and because of dishonest of human beings. But how much trust can we put? We know a few weeks back we read in the press that Golix itself was hacked and customers' accounts accessed. Perhaps you just want to, because if someone is going to ask it, but I just have saved them the effort.
Yeah. So if you read the press release, we clearly stated that it wasn't our systems which are compromised, it was our user accounts. So the way in that works is that if I know that you trade on our platform, and then I run social engineering attacks on you, and then I get access to your email address and to your password, and eliminate all barriers of security which you set up, there's nothing we can do. Because we can't have a webcam recording everything which a person is doing on our site. It's just not possible. So we've set up new policies to allow that. We set up Google Authenticator for all transactions. We're breaking apart the application. We have more security features on the back end which we can't disclose right now. So it's just one of those issues where when people see potential for money or to target people from a particular site, they do that, and then it ends up being bad press for us. But at the end of the day, the blame is on the user. So we have to fight for the user as well and sacrifice a bit on usability on our part, and that's what we did.
All right, the audience be the judges of whether that's convincing enough, but I'm sure it is. Right, okay, we open the discussions. I'm sure people will not mind. I know we won't get to 6 o'clock, but I'm sure this is very interesting, and people, for as long as we have questions and people are interested, I'm sure my panelists are very ready. So, yes, okay, we'll start with you, then here. Sorry, him, and then one next. Then you'll be number 4. Just want to set that clear so that we know the order.
Thank you very much, moderator, and my thanks to the panelists. The gentleman who is partly representing Buzz, thank you very much for conceding that the regulation of financial services at the moment leaves a lot to be desired. If I understood you right, you suggested that maybe these mobile financial services should be regulated by the RBZ. My question therefore is, are you confident that the RBZ would be a competent regulator of mobile financial services? I know you are regulated by RBZ, but I hope that won't cloud your judgment of whether RBZ is a regulator, especially in terms of this magical reference to moral suasion that they use in their regulatory approaches. My second and related question is that is RBZ and BAZ as key players in the financial sector working on a national position on cryptocurrencies? Because as change comes, it's always typical of people invested in current systems to try and rubbish what is coming. So we just want to know, are you working on a national position? What are you doing to make sure that we have a national position? I know of many positions, including South Korea and places like that, but what's the Zimbabwean position? And the last one is that the financial services sector historically has always hidden its electronic security, now cyber security failings. But that may well continue because we can't really control that. But it's important that as we move to an electronic cashless society, that there is increasing public awareness. What are the bankers and the other financial services doing to contribute to the public awareness activities? Thank you.
Sorry, did I get, maybe I didn't quite get your identity? It's always useful to so that we get a proper perspective of, if you don't mind.
No, 42-077224. Oh, you mean... But my name is Gwatidza Ruben, and I'm with the Information Society Initiatives Trust. Thank you.
Gentlemen, just take note of the questions, then we will try to field them at the end.
Afternoon once again. This is to the Mr. Masuka. Okay, you spoke about e-commerce not yet being very efficient and effective, but what strategies have you put in place so that when we get to an economical state where the US dollar is functional and we're using it, or we have our own currency, whatever will be happening, what have you put in place in terms of protecting the consumers? I know you spoke a lot about how the bank is being protected, but what have you put in place to protect your consumers in terms of authentication, verification, and how your POS systems are being encrypted and how you ensure that people's personal data isn't being stolen? What I'm essentially asking is, how are your consumers protected, and what are you putting in place to protect your consumers? Because so far you've spoken to us about what the bank is doing, but you've not told us what the consumers can do and how they can be protected. Thank you.
Please identify yourself. Maybe I missed that, sorry.
20% of illegitimate softwares that are being used, or pirated softwares that are being used in Africa in general. What security concerns, what security measures have you put in place to ensure that the systems that you use on the bank, for instance, your operating systems on the teller machines or any other machines, are actually authentic and actually are licensed and do receive security patches and updates to ensure that they're not vulnerable like most systems were in the WannaCry attack? Thank you.
Okay, I hope you won't lose track of the questions. They are tough on you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. My name is Alfred Nyasha. I'm with the Commercial Crimes Division, CID. Right. My question is directed to the gentleman from the banking sector. Well, while I agree with most of the things that you said, but there's one issue that I feel you have left out, and I think it's actually giving us as law enforcers a headache, the issue of card cloning. There's been an upsurge in card cloning in Zimbabwe since last year. And what is it that you are doing as bars, or as the banking community, to ensure that you also teach the banking community about issues to do with the safety of their cards? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take 2 or 3 more questions for the other gentlemen now. These 2. Is there anyone who has questions for the other 2 gentlemen? Okay.
Thank you. Abigail, I'm a student from the University of Zimbabwe Political Science Department. I'm doing a master's in international relations, focusing on cybercrime. My question is to the guy from Golix. I'd like to acknowledge firstly that you did mention that cybercrime is a global crime. So, and also you mentioned that in the press today there's an article about Golix launching its first Bitcoin ATM. So my question is, don't you think that by launching the ATM, you're making Zimbabwe more vulnerable to the crime of cybercrime? And in that respect, how are you going to protect citizens from being victims of cybercrime?
I think I've already been introduced, so I'll go straight into my question. I think my question is more towards the bankers. There's the issue of POS machines, and there was an article also even on ZBC where they are pushing more for POS machines. My question is, how are you educating the public in terms of what is an authentic POS machine and a non-authentic POS machines? Because there are so many that are out there. Some are pink, some are khaki, right? So how does then the public get to know that here I can swipe, here I can't swipe? And is the banking, why are we still using the mark stripe where instead of over to something that is much more secure? And finally, there are other technologies that are coming in also where people can start using chatbots to be able to do transactions. What are you doing to make sure that even the Reserve Bank can start to recognize other channels besides just the card system?
Okay, find one last lucky one, and just give the mic to one last lucky person.
My name is Sam from ZICT. My question is to do with the BAZ, directed to the BAZ gentleman. To start with, I want to find out what this new concept of bring your own device, whether it has an impact on your security in the banking sector. When you go to other countries like South Africa, United Kingdom, and so forth, you find that they've got computers in the banking hall where customers can just go and do some transactions that they should otherwise have done on the counter. But sometimes in Zimbabwe, we use our own devices. They can tell you that you do that online if you want, or do it on your own device if you want. But what impact does it have? And finally, why are we still banned from speaking on the phone in your banking halls? Thank you. As well as eating chibage. in the banking world.
Right. Okay, so over to my panelists. I think most of the questions are on you, Baz. I hope you took note of most of them.
Thank you. So I do have 8 questions. It really confirms what I was saying. Almost everyone uses technology to transact, and we all have money with the financial institutions. So I hope, but I think some of the questions I'll try to answer them at once. So I think the first question which came through was to do with RBZ being competent to regulate MNOs in terms of mobile money. I would not answer on behalf of the Reserve Bank, but in terms of probably having a holistic approach towards this problem, why a centralized Yes. Thank you. So in terms of regulation, if we have different regulators regulating almost the same thing, it becomes a problem because look, if you look at the banks themselves, they do have mobile money. If you look at the MNOs, they do have mobile money. So if you're going to have, for example, different limits, for example, you're looking at the risk of a transaction. And therefore, we are regulated to say the limit for a transaction or even a charge is $2 for a transaction below $10, something like that. Because we're looking at the risk which is there. So these other entities has got a different limit or a different regulation. But at the same time, because look at the conversions, right now we do have the Internet of Things. You can transact from your mobile. So it's irrespective of whether it's coming from an MNO or it's coming from a bank. This is basically the same transaction. So at least we should have one regulator. But it is very difficult for trust to regulate banks because there are other things that will not be regulatable, if I have to say. But I think in summary, that's why I recommend RBZ to regulate. If they have to assist each other, maybe we have to look at a way that they have to also chip in as trust because there are other things that also depend on the network. In terms of this other question, RBZ.